Well, hello, countryside. Good Friday morning. Pastor John here. Sorry, I didn't get one of these out last week. We were finishing up our VBS, and so we had a big day on Friday, and we had a barbecue for all the parents and kids, and it was a smashing success. Really enjoyed that. Thank you to all of the volunteers that helped out so faithfully with that. It was awesome. And then we had our VBS Sunday. So many kids came, and they were the life of the party on Sunday morning as they recited their verses and sang their songs. It was great. Anyway, we're going to jump into it. My devotional thought for this week actually comes from my readings today. Judges 17. Judges is a book that tells us why we need Jesus. It is after the life of Joshua. So Joshua was the last great leader before David, really, of the nation of Israel. And in between the time of the time of Joshua and the time of the kings, we have the judges. Excuse me, I apologize. Anyway, what we're supposed to see is we're supposed to see attempts at leading well, ultimate failures, and we're supposed to look forward to to Jesus, even beyond the kings, and that's kind of how this segues. Um, but Judges 17 is an interesting chapter. It is the story of Micah and the Levite. And the story opens with this man named Micah, and he robs his mother of 1,100 pieces of silver. And so she then curses him. And Matthew Henry said something interesting about this. He says, those who love God when faced with the loss of property, they turn to God in prayer. Those that don't love God turn to cursing. And so, right off the bat, we know this is not going to be the ideal situation going on. As it moves forward, though, this man has a twinge of conscience, and he returns the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, who then reverses the curse and says, "This was for you anyway." And so I'm going to restore it to you. But she takes this silver and she makes idols and a carved image and a metal image. She basically makes household gods. Now, one of the most interesting verses in this chapter is verse 17 or verse 6, chapter 17, verse 6, and it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." And so this is a group of people who have no king, they have no leader. There are judges wandering around, but this is a country. It's not small. There's no central leadership, and people just did what they felt was best. And interestingly, what that seems to do is it seems to lead to idolatry, and that's basically what Judges tells us is that even though God had brought these people into the land, he had subdued their enemies. He had made a much smaller nation conquer much bigger nations, and he had done all these things for Israel. The moment they didn't have a leader, they turned to idols, and then they would turn to idols. They would sin against God. God would discipline them. Then they would cry out to God. God would send a judge. That judge would get the ballast back in the bottom of the ship, get the keel set straight. They would start moving in the right way. That judge would go away, usually by dying. And then the nation would fall apart spiritually. They would run after idols. They would live like their pagan neighbors. They would do all sorts of abhorrent things. And that's what this story is telling us. Without God, without a godly leader, this nation just went from hilltop to valley, just always running back after nothing. And Micah then decides to take these idols, and he basically sets up a temple in his own home. And a man travels by who's a Levite, and he tells the man, "Hey, come into my house, live in my house. I'm going to pay you. You're going to be my priest." And we know that was not God's wish. But interestingly, this is what he does. Again, Matthew Henry says, every man did that which was right in his own eyes, and then they soon did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. So why is that my devotional thought for today? I think it's because we're not real far off from that. when we don't have, as a nation, when we don't have godly leadership, we run headlong into idolatry. But then it's not just the nation. I think it's also our hearts. I think far too often, if we are not being led in a godly manner, we run after things that break God's heart. We do evil, and oftentimes, like, I would argue that in our context, in our culture today, even in the church, we've been waiting so long for Christ to return that we've gotten so complacent, we've gotten so comfortable with the wickedness and evil around us that we often fall into it. We often make idols of things, like this man's inheritance, Micah's inheritance, would have been a good thing. It would have been for him, for his children, and yet he turns it into an idol. How often do we do that? How often do we take good things that are meant for good, and we turn those things into idolatry? We turn those things into the thing that we chase after, the thing that we do, the thing that really defines who we are. And so it really was a heart check for me. Am I turning good things into little g God things? Am I rushing after things? Like, is my identity caught up in Christ, or is it caught up in the things that I think would be cool, or things that I think would define me well, or am I caught up in those things? Are those things sitting on the throne that only Jesus should occupy? So that's kind of what hit me as I was going through Judges chapter 17, the things that I was thinking about. Hopefully that might be helpful to you, maybe a little challenging. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Love you, praying for you. We'll see you again next week. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.